Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of the Exodus. Today we are in Exodus chapter 32. We're looking at the great rebellion, the great sin of Israel when they made the golden calf. Now we've been looking for a number of sessions at the instructions for the tabernacle, which Moses received while he was on the mountain. He was on the mountain receiving these instructions for 40 days. It's a long time. And during this time, the Israelites despaired of his return and turned to idolatry. Let's read the first few verses of chapter 32. Now, when the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and they said, "Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him." They may have thought perhaps he died up on the mountain. Perhaps he died in the presence of God. But we're afraid he's not coming back, so we need some help. Aaron answered them, "Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, your daughters are wearing. Bring them to me." So all the people took off their earrings, and they brought them to Aaron. He took what they had handed him, and he made it into an idol, cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. And he said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf, and he announced, "Tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord." So the next day the people rose early, and they sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. And afterward they sat down to eat and to drink, and they got up to indulge in revelry. They made the golden calf. They said to Aaron, "We don't know what happened to your brother. Is he coming back or not? We need a God we can see." How quickly they had forgotten what God had told them. It was just a few months ago, God had delivered them out of Egypt. They had seen the power of his hands as he visited the plagues on Egypt. They had seen the power of God as he opened the Red Sea and delivered them from the pursuing army. They had seen that God led them across the wilderness. He provided water in the desert. He provided manna for them to eat. They had seen all of these things. They had come to the mountain. They had heard the voice of God speak from the mountain. And just 40 days ago, they had said, "Whatever the Lord says, we will do." All that is fresh in their memory. And yet here, when Moses is gone, they lose heart. They become discouraged and they say to Aaron, "We need a God we can see." You know, they had grown up in Egypt. They lived all their lives in Egypt until the deliverance. They had seen idolatry. They knew the Egyptians worshiped gods they could see. They knew the peoples all around amongst whom they traveled worshiped idols you could see. They knew that the land of Canaan to which they were going worshiped idols you could see. And so they said, "Make us a God we can see." Aaron did. He knew better. But he gave in to the pressure. He was afraid. And he fashioned an idol in the form of a calf and overlaid it with gold. "These are your gods, O Israel," or "This is your God who brought you up out of Egypt." Now the question is he and the people breaking the first command, "You shall have no gods before me"? Or are they breaking the second command, "You shall not make an idol, an image of God in the form of anything"? We're not really sure. In one sense, I don't suppose it matters. I want you to notice something about verse 5. After Aaron had made the calf, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, "Tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord." Now, the word Lord there is actually the name of God, the name God had given Moses in his first meeting on Mount Sinai in the burning bush. "I am who I am." So he uses the name of God. It's almost as if Aaron is saying to the people, "We're still going to worship the God who brought us out of Egypt, but I'm going to make you an image you can see. And so this calf I have made for you is the God who brought us out of Egypt." That would be a violation of the second command, to think you can make an image of God and an idol of God. So it may have been Aaron was trying to play both sides of the fence. That is, he was trying to say, "I'm still worshiping the true God, but I'm going to make an image of him that is simply a representation of who he is." Of course, that's also a violation of the second, because when you make an image of God, you end up worshiping that image, which becomes your God. This is why God had forbidden it. I suspect that's what Aaron was doing. He thought he could say, yes, I'm still going to worship the true God. I'm just going to make an image of him that you can see. Something you're used to so you can carry it around and you can touch it if you want to. This is the God you see. The Israelites were having a hard time worshiping a God they could not see. So they said, so make us one we can see and we can touch, we can carry around, and we can worship. And he did. Now, idolatry always leads to other kinds of sin as well. When it says they got up to eat and to drink and to indulge in revelry, and that is the biblical word for sexual sin, for sexual promiscuity. And so the sin of idolatry, the sin of worshiping other gods, led to all kinds of other fleshly sins. The people had so quickly devolved away from worshiping the true God. Now they're worshiping an idol, and they're engaging in all types of horrible sins. Judgment is about to fall. And it all came about when they took their eyes off the true God. Moses was gone for a few days. They lost heart and they turned away from the true God, the one they had just said, we will always obey his word. And now they turn to something of their own making. The sin of idolatry is always a threat when we take our eyes off the true God. We take our eyes off worshiping him according to his word, and we begin to think we can fashion our own images of God. The Israelites fell into great sin, and there's going to be consequences for it. In our next session, we'll begin to look at some of the consequences, but right now we just simply see what happens when you take your eyes off God and begin to think you can fashion God out of your own making. That is idolatry, and it always leads to terrible sin. It did in Israel years ago, and it will for us as well if ever we take our eyes off of God. So let us be careful to keep our eyes on God as we know him in Jesus Christ, to live according to his word, and to safeguard ourselves against what happened to Israel. You have a great day today, and I'll see you next time for our 5-minute Bible study in the book of the Exodus.